All right, guys, welcome to the Onelife Podcast. Here with Jamie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
She specializes in women's sex trafficking, like how to recognize it, how to get girls out of it. And then you've also dealt with the other side, which is people who are sex offenders, who are people who have actually committed these crimes.
Yeah, I've done both. So I've done like victimization and I've done work with offenders too.
And then you're also a family therapist. You got a whole bunch of things.
I've got a big wheelhouse to pull
you got a lot of education there behind you.
Yeah, I'm not a one-trick pony, man.
Yeah, there's a lot I'd like to talk to you about, but with this podcast, I'm trying to get to more meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that has more impact, stuff that can help more people. So as much as I don't want to talk about sex trafficking, I think it's important to talk about it.
It is, especially here in Vegas, because it's very prominent in Vegas. And a lot of people don't know. A lot of people think it's that it happens like the movie Taken, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, where the girls are just like grabbed. But really, this happens in your own backyard. I actually had an incident that happened just a couple of weeks ago where it definitely felt like that could have been trafficking. And that was to myself. And I was just on my way to Starbucks.
What happened?
Well, it was really interesting, actually. But this is how girls get taken. This is one of the more extreme ends, but I'll talk about the two ways that it typically happens. So what happened to me just a couple weeks ago is I was actually just going to Starbucks and I was walking to my car, but I swear to God, something just didn't feel right to me. And girls, I think we have an intuition. And I just, for whatever reason, I noticed a car. It was across the parking lot and I noticed a car and it just started kind of going in my direction pretty rapidly. It was going through the parking lot, so it wasn't going up and down the rows. It was cutting through, and it was cutting through directly to me. But I didn't think too much of it. I was like, oh, that's weird. Let's walk into my car. And then I was like, that's going really fast. And then I just immediately walked to my car, shut the door. And as soon as I shut the door, the car pulls up next to me and he's waving a dollar bill and he goes, excuse me, miss, excuse me, miss, excuse me, miss, excuse me, miss. And he's like, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And I was like, that is trafficking. That's trafficking. This is usually a distraction. They'll usually have somebody in the back seat working with them. And all they're waiting for you to do is get out of your car so they can put you in theirs.
Really?
Well, think about it logically. It doesn't make sense. If you need help, why are you waving a dollar?
Yeah, the whole thing.
That doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any logical sense. And I had the wherewithal to, luckily I have a bit of a foundation in this, but most women and men aren't going to recognize that. They hear the word help and they want to help, right? But the things, they don't add up, you know?
So are people being abducted? Even just in Las Vegas?
I do think that, yes, people have been abducted. You'll see women leaving parties, usually they can air tag your car, right? And they can follow your car. That's one of the things that's happening. Something can be going on with your windshields where they do something to get you out of your car, noticing that something's wrong, and then that's when they will. Gotcha. But that's on the rarer end. There's
actually a girl. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There was a girl taken from the corner of our street. She was killed. There's now flowers on the corner of our street.
Wow,
that's crazy.
She was just taken.
She was taken, I think, sexually abused and killed.
How old was she?
I don't know. It was only a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so ago.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's literally the same age as my girlfriend. And there's a bar just across the road, and she was going to walk there, and it's like, no, you can't walk anywhere as a female. You can't take any risks.
It's a different world for girls a lot of times.
And it's funny, your boyfriend is what, 6'4", 6'5", big guy. I'm a 220-pound, 6'1" male. It's never crossed my mind. I've never felt.
You guys are so lucky.
I've never, ever felt in danger. I've never had to watch my back. I've done martial arts my whole life. I've never. But it's funny, you keep hearing these stories from females, and they're constantly getting harassed. They're constantly
It's just part of life. I know, ask any girl where her keys are when she walks to the parking lot. They're in her hand. You know, they're in her hand just in case. Where's the guy's keys? I don't know. He's probably fumbling around for them. You know, so it's little things like that. But women, you know, because we don't have the same physical strength that guys do, a lot of times our hypervigilance is what protects us a lot of times. Had I not been super aware of my surroundings and environment, that could have been something that I could have missed. Now, I can't say for sure that was a trafficking incident, but it certainly didn't seem. Right? it was certainly not normal. I was certainly targeted. I didn't see anybody else get targeted that way, you know.
And you're better off safe than sorry. Do you think, I feel like a lot of females don't realize how much stronger guys are. Can you relate to that? Like, I feel like
physical strength.
I feel like a lot of females don't realize that any guy could basically pick up any girl and take him if they wanted to.
I think they're aware, but it might be difficult to acknowledge, you know, because that requires, there's so much negativity around vulnerability, and there shouldn't be.
Gotcha.
You know,
so
and
it's an ego type of.
I don't know if it's ego. I think it's just fear. You know, I think it's fear. It's scary to kind of take a look and confront
to actually
those
accept
things.
the fact that, yeah, that's interesting. So you mentioned like sex trafficking not being the taken style. So what is it exactly?
Well, you know, there's different types of trafficking, but sex trafficking is obviously when you're being forced to have sex, you know, against your will. And the biggest way that I have seen women and men, because men are trafficked as well.
Oh, they really?
They are. They're just as, you know, I see a higher commodity of women being trafficked, but men are also trafficked and sexually abused as well. And I don't think and that's underreported. But I think the biggest way that it happens is it's very subtle. It's usually, and the ages that you're most likely to get roped into sex trafficking is age 12 to 14.
Is it really?
That's usually the typical age where they'll reel you in.
Really?
So typically what I see is, and this isn't for everybody, but it's a girl having problems at home, okay, and she's looking for an outlet, and there's usually a guy or a good girlfriend, okay, that is there to provide support for her. So usually the girl will want to introduce her to a guy, or a girl has a cool friend, or like a music studio or something that's going to help her, right? And the guy, if it's a guy, the guy wants to be her boyfriend. He showers her with love and affection, basically the things that she's not getting. He will see a need and meet it.
And like fake that need.
And meet it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's an illusion. And that will start to develop the trust, and that will start to develop the attachment. And then that slowly evolves into a place where she no longer has the ability to choose. So she loses freedom. And it could be a "you owe me, I've done all this for you" situation.
Gotcha. Like, especially as young age, you're getting manipulated, right?
Absolutely. Well, 100% you're manipulated. Like, if you don't know that they're a pimp and you think that they're your boyfriend, like, that's manipulation.
Can I ask a question? Why would a friend be involved? Like, a friend, is she getting paid? Is she making money from it?
Well, a lot of the times they're like den moms, and the girls running the show have been trafficked, actually, at one point, and now they're up higher on the ranks. And they either get credit for getting more girls in, or they're getting less beatings, or they're getting rewards, or they don't have to work as hard. So those are their kickbacks for getting new girls in. It is scary.
So rather than like, I've been through this, I don't want anyone else to go through this, they're actually making it worse.
Well, look, they don't really have a lot of choice. They're also trying to survive, you know? They're trying to find a way through the mess as well. Now, is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? 100%. Is it abuse? Yeah, but I mean, I have to look at things in the context of it. They're also victims, you know? And they're trying to survive. And if that means that they get more food, if that means that they don't have to work, that's the trade.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
That's the world that they're in. They don't have the options that we fortunately have.
Okay. So 12 to 14, they're getting manipulated. They're not getting what they're getting at home. And then like it's a guilt trip, the manipulation. What happens from there? Well,
you know, they're either removed from a lot of their ability to choose, so their freedom. So a lot of these people don't have cars, so they don't have a way to get out. Their IDs are taken, or they don't have them to begin with.
Are they at that age? Are they moving in with this guy, or are they still at home with their parents?
Usually these girls have left hoping that somebody is going to save them or rescue them. So there's two ways. There's the taken way, and then there's the he's my boyfriend or it's my friend thing.
But what I mean by that, have they moved out of the house where they're living and now living with this boyfriend?
In trafficking situations, you're most of the time living with your pimp or your trafficker.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So because they have to control and isolate you away from family, friends, support.
Now they're 100% relying on it for everything.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So one of the big things is that they have to create dependency.
Okay.
That's one of the big ways, dependency and isolation. So those are two of the big ways that they can control a person. Because if you need them, if you're relying on them, well, if I need you to eat tonight.
Yeah, food, shelter,
bingo.
Anything.
How much control can you have over somebody 100%. If you do that, right? So that's what they're in. And then if they isolate you, if you don't have a phone, you can't call mom, and you don't have a car, how are you going to get help? What are you going to do? Like now you got to work.
You're literally stuck.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, gosh, I remember, these girls are so beaten down, and a lot of the time they don't even know what real care is. I remember I was in the jail one time, and these girls, they're so like brainwashed, right? They're so young and beautiful, and they don't even know what they've been through. And I remember one girl was, and they can also identify with their abuser and present with Stockholm syndrome over a period of time. And that's just a way that they survive. And that's what I was seeing in this one case. So this girl was telling me how great her fucking pimp was. And she was happy that she had a Romeo pimp and not a gorilla pimp. A gorilla pimp will beat the fuck out of you. A Romeo pimp will send you flowers and occasionally beat the fuck out of you, you know? So she was happy that she had like a Romeo pimp, and she was talking about how good her dude was. And I was like, well, what makes him so good? And she's like, well, after he got done beating the shit out of her, he gave her a bag of Cheetos. And I remember sitting there, and my heart just broke for her. And I was like, wow, like you have to think of what her life was before that to feel so good about a bag of Cheetos.
Is this, are you talking about like bad areas where these kids are growing up? Are you talking about low-income families?
Anywhere.
Are you talking about abusive parents?
It could be anywhere where they don't feel love. So that exceeds any lines of poverty, any lines of race, any kind of anything. That's anywhere they don't feel loved. That's the common denominator.
That's so scary.
It is scary. Now, it's more prevalent, and I think more people are preyed upon and victimized in lower income communities because there aren't as many resources available. So I think more people are preyed upon there, and it's easier to go unseen there. And that needs to change. But the targeting and the vulnerability exists beyond that. So why are they getting beaten? Is it just for the control? Control. It's power and control. That's what this is all about. It's like, you don't want to do what I want. They have to make an example out of you. It's like, if they can't control you with the dependency, the isolation, if you want to bail, you want to rerun, well, they have to make a lesson out of you because they can't have you, going around and leaving your money for them, your commodity for them. And then the isolation of a bruise or scar, no one's going to see anyway. Who would see it? And also who would care? Nobody cares. Do you know how many pimps and like how many Johns, which are basically, it's somebody, I think they have a new term now, but I don't remember what it is. How many Johns know the girls are being trafficked? Oh my God, I can't. When I used to work with sex offenders, I'd see it all the time. They know the girls are being trafficked and they don't give a fuck. They'll fuck them anyway. And then they'll be like, I'm really sorry you're going through this. Really? Yeah. It's gross. That's crazy. That's nuts. Yeah. Sorry. I got a lot of questions. Yeah. Fire off. Yeah. You're going to have to direct me because I've got stories for days. Yeah. I don't know. I want to get to stories, to be honest. That's what I do want to do is spread awareness so people are more aware. So would a pimp have more than one girl? A pimp can have anywhere from one girl to multiple girls. It depends on what kind of like. If he does have multiple girls, they all live together. How's that done? See, we can't use the all or nothing terminology here because there are always exceptions to the rule. In most cases, they are living with multiple women. Okay, and they're all being isolated. Yeah, well, there's like a structure to it a lot of times. Like usually you'll have one guy that is getting the money from the girls. Okay. And he's got a set of house rules. Okay. Rules the girls have to follow. So that can be different from anybody. Like, you got to make this much money. If you don't bring this, if you don't meet your quota, a lot of the girls have quotas. Yeah. A lot of the girls have quotas, so that they have to have like a certain amount of money that they make. You don't make that, well, you might not eat that night. You might not be able to come home until you make that money. And believe me, he's watching you. And then there's usually like a head girl, like a den mom, that's also keeping the girls in check. And some of the girls, there's competing for the pimp's affection. Gotcha. There's so many dynamics to this, but usually it is one guy with multiple women. And sometimes the girls can switch up on their pimp. You know, there's...
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And if that happens, there's different rules for that. So
that makes a lot of sense. And then where is a 14, 16-year-old girl going to make this money? Like, how is that
it's everywhere. It's right in front of your face. I see it at the casinos all the time.
Okay, so the straight.
I see it at the casinos all the time. And the casinos,
but I mean, a 14-year-old is going to stand out, right?
Well, the casinos are aware of it. I was working with a reporter out here with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and I remember him sending me some stats about casino involvement in this because it's good for business.
Because like guys are going to come to the casino and gamble until they go get. Wow.
So, and I don't really have a ton of information on that, but I know that it happens. And 12 to 14 is typically the age that they are roped in. Now those girls are going to be more underground and more on Backpage than the ones that you're going to see out in the casino area. But there are so many girls. I see them all the time. And a lot of them will say that they're independent. A lot of them will say that I don't have a pimp, but that's not fucking true. A lot of them do. And you'll see them in pairs. They're pretty easy to spot. They usually have their own code, their own lingo, their own signs, and the casino knows it too.
Getting manipulated at a young age and then staying like more underground until like become of age where they can legally go on casinos.
There's no blueprint for how this works.
You know? I know there's a million different variations. Is that generally what would? So where would a 14-year-old be forced to have sex, and how is that guy finding that girl?
Well, a lot of them are just, you know, they're just people that you meet. You know,
like
it's not. It could be the Strip. It could be a mall. They're frequenting places where the younger population is. It could be the school. It could be a flyer that they put out to attract a certain type of person. It could be like everybody wants to be a star. Everybody wants to be a this. It's just the promise. It's just who you know. And it doesn't take much to find a 14 or 12-year-old girl. Like, those girls are extremely vulnerable to authority, and a lot of them want to be stars. And so it doesn't take much to get their attention, you know, and attract them in. Because they are so young, you will most likely see the hotel room buys. You'll see like on like, I don't think they do it. Like, they think they shut the page down on Backpage. But one of the things when I was really heavily in it that you would see is the way that they advertise the trafficking rings, because there are rings, like sections that they frequent, was they're like new, only in town for Tuesday to Thursday. And that's a clear indicator that they're being trafficked. Okay. They have their pictures on there, and they're always in some like some hotel room. That's where a lot of the action takes place. Okay. Especially for the younger ones. And they won't put their real ages or advertise that, but you know, there's like a whole language to it. And then there's an underground of the underground. So it gets really dark. Yeah. And
then, who are these guys? Is it just someone you walk past on the street?
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're your dad. They're your brothers.
Is that one of the scariest things, realizing it's just everybody and anybody, and there isn't a certain type?
There is no, like, obviously there are some factors that can make the likelihood increase, right? And you can kind of do a behavioral analysis of what would be most likely. But
What are those things that you would?
Well, I don't really want to go down that road because I think a lot of people will misread a lot of those statistics, because here it's like going on WebMD. You think you have every disease, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so I want to kind of stay away from that, because I don't want to target certain people, and I don't want certain people to feel attacked, or populations. What I will say is that it's across the board, and there is no one thing that's going to pull you out. There's no one thing. It's just, you need to just kind of be aware and do your best to kind of protect yourself, and the best way to do that is to meet your own needs, really.
And then why are you so involved in this?
I didn't try to be.
Yeah, I mean, you know a lot about it. So what led you down this rabbit hole?
So before I was doing therapy, I was living in California, and I was working as a social worker for children in foster care. And there was one girl that I was particularly fond of, and her name was Destiny. And she's a beautiful girl, and I got her when she was 8 years old. She was on my caseload, and I had her for 8 years. And throughout that time, I saw her lose her family, her brother, her sister to the foster care system. I saw her foster family reject her and not want her. I saw her go through a period of rebellion, and I saw that light slowly fade out of her eyes. Oh, it almost brings me to tears. And then I saw her get trafficked. And I promised that I would help get her back, and I did. I started working with the Vice unit. I started going on Backpage, and I started learning the language of that, and found her. I found her on it. And so I gave that information to Vice. She was still a minor at the time, so luckily they had some authority, and got her back on my caseload. And then I remember, and this was the part that was so confusing to me and I had such a tough time with, was she called me one day, and she was sick. She had gotten sick with something, right? And she wanted me to take her to the hospital. So I took her to the hospital. And while I was waiting, she had contacted her pimp, and he came and got her.
Oh, really?
And I lost her, and I never saw her again.
Oh, really?
However, and it was just mind-boggling how I was like, that's now somebody that's in it, right? Like she's in it. Now, if I ask her, she's not going to say that she's been trafficked, but she has. She has been trafficked, but she's not going to see it that way, Anyway, time passes. I end up moving to Vegas, and I reconnected with her at some point. I never saw her again, but I reconnected. She was working the Blade. The Blade is the track out here. And
what do you mean by the track?
It's where the girls make their rounds. This is where they pick up people.
Okay.
It's known for, they will say prostitution, but I say sex trafficking. Okay. And she was working that, and she was posting her location for potential, suitors. And I'd talked to her a couple times, and then that was it. It just kind of faded out. But that's kind of what got me into it. It was that.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned being underage and having authority to take action.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're a certain age, does that mean authority?
There wasn't any. I could no longer. When she turned 18, I didn't have any.
Is that because she's an adult and it's now her decision?
Pretty much, yeah.
Even though she's been manipulated like she was at 17.
Yeah, there's nothing
that's crazy,
isn't it? I know, it's so sad.
That kind of really hit heavy when I heard that. I was like, wow.
I felt powerless. I was like, but how can we do this, right? This is a little baby. And I saw the evolution of Destiny. Like I saw her spirit break, and I was like, fuck, that's not a choice. That's not a choice. That's a little girl doing the very best she can, and she was so different. And I just saw that light go right out of her eyes, it was tragic.
How, Do you know the stats in the country, the world, like how?
No, I'm really terrible at stats.
Is this a very small percentage, or what happens, or is this way bigger than people realize?
I think it's a lot bigger than people realize. Like, I mean, it's happening all around you all the time, and not every case is as severe as the one that I just explained. It actually almost happened to me when I was 14. You know, so like this has happened. You know, you talk to any woman, and she has some story of sexual harassment or sexual abuse. I don't know any woman that doesn't.
I had a lady on here, Joy, saying like most females being sexually abused.
I think it's like 1 in 5 or 1 in 3, and that's reported.
Yeah, that's what I think she said. 1 in 4, and she said that's reported.
Yeah,
which basically means it's close to 100%.
Yeah. See, and most women don't report. So
why is it?
Well, one, a lot of them are protecting their abusers. A lot of them are in relationships with people that are abusing them, and so they're protecting it. Another one is there's a lot of shame and embarrassment around it, and people are worried about being believed because the system doesn't really work in the favor of the victims a lot of times. They're made to feel crazy. Plus, you have to undergo rape testing, and you know what I mean? Like a rape kit's just disgusting and brutal and violating, and then it's like being raped again, you know? And then
and then it's public, and you got to face it to friends and family. And
exactly, and it's like, do you really want everybody knowing about what happened to you? It's such a violation, and it's so traumatic.
A lot easier. I wouldn't say easier, but it's people suppressing it for that reason. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a really, like, think about the most hurtful thing you've been through, and you've got to tell the world.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
So if somebody who suppresses it and doesn't talk about it, what happens there? Because I'm sure you're the right person to ask that question to.
Well, I think, I think that that's a very traumatic event, and if you don't heal from your trauma, I think it manifests physically and impedes on your most emotional, mental health. And then I think it can negatively impact you physically as well, because the body holds trauma, the body keeps the score. And so I think there's a lot of physical ailments that can result from not working through your trauma.
Is that going to affect future relationships?
It can,
being a parent, things like that.
Yeah, if you don't heal from it, absolutely. Like, I can see this go one of two ways. You can see like a complete block in romantic relationships where you want nothing to do with it, or it's the other way where you become more hypersexual.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so a question is, somebody is sexually abused or raped or has been through sex trafficking, what is the right thing to do? Who is the right person to go to? What is the best way where it's not going to be shown to the world?
Well, it just depends. Like, it depends on so many factors. It depends on their age. It depends on where they are, or it depends on what your resources are. Like, a lot of the victims have to kind of report it themselves. If they're underage and you suspect that they're being trafficked, there is a national trafficking hotline that you can call.
Okay.
I don't know that number, but if you're traveling, I've been seeing it on the back of bathroom stalls, which is great.
Oh, really?
Super, super smart. I've heard stories of airline flight attendants noticing that something is off and reporting it.
Okay.
Fucking amazing protocols in place. So there has been a lot of growth, but if you're it's hard if you're an adult. You can still, I believe that you can still report, but I'm not sure what the letter of the law is. I just deal with the behavior and the psychopathy of it. I don't know what the law says about it.
Okay. Yeah, and I was just wondering if, where do you turn and
Well, I mean, you obviously want to get away from the person that's abusing you. So you'd want to tell somebody safe that can hopefully remove you from that area and provide protection. You want to call 911 if you're in an emergency situation, and they can send out, people to help you or keep you in a safe space. And then from there, offer you the appropriate referrals. But really the key is just kind of getting out of the abusive environment. But they have such a grip on you that that's really hard to do.
Yeah, easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is heavy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I really know too much about, so I do appreciate your time.
Yeah.
On the other end, how did you end up dealing with sex offenders? And how was that?
Wow, that was hard.
Imagine how hard that must be.
Yeah. I didn't want to, I can tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, does anybody want to?
Some people probably have a knack for it. It was not my jam. When I moved out here, I was hired at an agency that did a lot of work with sex trafficking and victims, but they also had a program for offenders, and they asked me to be a part of it. And because I had just moved out here, I didn't say no. I felt like I needed to say yes, even though I really, really was against being a part of that population. I didn't really see how I could serve them because I was so heavily immersed in the victim side of things.
Yeah, you weren't coming in like fresh. You're coming in from the bad side of things.
It's hard to, when you're a therapist, you really want to be very objective, and you want to be able to give good feedback and support to anybody. But therapists are human too. And there's, transference and countertransference that can occur in the therapeutic process. And so I was mindful of that. So I wanted to be open to that. But there were times where I was working with sex offenders, and I would do group work. So as part of their probate or parole, they would have to attend weekly therapy. And mind you, this therapy took place at 8:00 at night in a remote building. And that to me was already very unnerving. And you had to, I'm a woman and I'm challenging them, and I'm in a position of authority, and I'm challenging their faulty thinking and their abuse, and getting information about how their polygraph tests read, and, what their crimes were and their report histories and things like that. And it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear somebody tell me why they raped an 8-year-old. And then they justify it and they tell you, well, she was the woman in the house, she was doing the dishes. Like, try to listen to that all day long.
Really?
Yeah, that's just one of the ones. And then they try to violate your personal boundaries as well. Little small tests. I remember I had like a hair on me, and we had to sit in like a big circle, right? One of the offenders reached over and just something just like that. But if you don't check it, if you don't check that right there, that grows. That was a test. Little things like that.
What do you mean by that? What was the test?
Well, he's testing my boundaries. He shouldn't be touching me.
No.
He's seeing how I react. He's playing with me. He's seeing, is she going to be okay with this? It's an innocent act. It's plausible deniability, right? He can just kind of brush that off really quickly. But if I don't reinforce the boundaries, if I don't assert myself, and even in asserting myself, I'm running a risk here because it could trigger him. Okay, but you have to have very firm boundaries when you're dealing with people like this. So all of those things, it was an anxious environment for me. It was not an environment that I wanted to do. So I only did it for about 3 months, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's crazy. What leads a guy to do stuff like that? Do you have any idea? Is it like what is? I mean, you explain where like females fall in the victim and like how the females can fall into it, but what starts a guy on that path?
That's the whole nature nurture issue. It's like, were they made this way or were they born this way? And I think it can be a combination of both. I think an unloving and unsupportive environment might cause men to wonder. I think pornography certainly does not help in the sexual fantasies that can occur, but really it's a sense of a person needing to have some power and control over their life. And a way that they get that gratification is one of the measures is to sexually act that out, and that's total dominance over another person.
That's crazy. Sorry, it's not very often I'm lost on things to say, but yeah you're definitely keeping me quiet. It's like nuts.
I know, I've got a rich history.
Yeah. Is there any before we move on, is there anything else you want to touch on that specific area?
No, I mean, I have my own theory about choice, and so people can go check that out, but it's called True Choice. And so it really kind of frees up victims and helps them with any shame or guilt that they have if they have been trafficked, or they do say they are doing work with OnlyFans and they're feeling shame and guilt about it. Go check out my theory on True Choice, and that can help you with that.
Okay. What's your thoughts on OnlyFans?
I mean, to each their own. You know, I don't really have an opinion about it. I think a lot of girls do it and they make money from it, and fine. If it's not causing them distress, there's no issue, right? If it's causing you distress, well, there's an issue. That's how I'd measure it.
Okay. And then as far as you mentioned your family, all that, talk to me about that side of things. Something a little bit.
Like family therapy?
Yeah, something a little bit not so, I mean, that's heavy.
All the stuff I do is dark and twisted.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You need a child psychologist.
So what's going on in families these days?
Oh, I don't know.
Why is everyone getting divorced? What's happening here?
Well, people get divorced because they marry the wrong person. That's why.
That's what you think?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm divorced. I totally married the wrong person, you know, like, and I knew. So I think a lot of times we knew we're connected to what is in our best interest, but we don't really choose that way. You know, we pick out of fear. We pick out of scarcity. We pick because they're the person in front of us, and you know, I don't want to have to start over again with somebody new. You know, we pick from those reasons, but really, I think a lot of us see the signs, a lot of us see the red flags, and we do it anyway, and then we end up getting divorced, and then we blame marriage.
And then it's 1,000 times harder when you should have done it 5 years prior.
It is. It's hard. I had to restart my own life over, so like that was really difficult.
So you're saying like when you see that red flag. You ever heard that saying, like, if you see a red flag with an employee, just to cut it because you're going to be doing it 3-5 months later anyway? Yeah. You think the same thing in a relationship?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, talk to me.
No. Everybody's got red flags. You know, this is like kind of this pop psychology bullshit where it's just like, oh, red flags. Here's 5 red flags. It's like, I could fucking find 5 red flags on myself. Like, it's just, it doesn't work that way.
So what is it that you're not seeing that we know where you should like step away?
Well, you want to look for is patterns, okay? Because abuse follows patterns, personality disorders, they follow patterns. That's when you know things can become toxic and unhealthy. I can't even get into all of that, okay? But patterns, that's because anybody can have a bad moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is a pattern? Something that
consistently is pervasive across multiple settings and multiple people, multiple relationships. So you're not just going to be having a problem with Sally. You have a problem with Ted, and you have a problem with your boss, and you have a problem at work. Patterns.
Gotcha. Okay.
So those are patterns. But with red flags in general, address them with people. Like bring them up. Now, some things I don't tolerate at all, like abuse. Red flag, I guess. I don't tolerate that. That's not really something that I work with. It's just kind of like, no, I don't tell a woman that's being beaten to just hang in there and try harder. I'm like, get the fuck out, you know? But address them, and you want to see how people respond. That's the key. You're not like, you want to see how they respond. Are they blaming you? Are they pointing the finger at you? Are they making you feel like it's your fault? Or are they taking ownership and accountability? Do they have empathy? Do they have remorse? Those are the things you want to look for, because you can work with that.
Okay.
You know.
Gotcha. And then from a guy's point of view with a female, like you mentioned abuse, like a no-go. What is something like a no-go for a male sees in a female?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know what I mean? Because a female's not going to be beating a male necessarily.
Well, actually, a lot of girls, a lot of the clients on my caseload, a lot of the men are actually being physically abused or have been abused by, yes.
How does that work?
Well, let's just say they're in an argument and she starts hitting them.
Okay.
Or hitting him and sending pages and pages of just verbal abuse. That's abuse.
Okay.
Psychological abuse. Smearing his reputation.
Do you think that is an out for a guy? That type of behavior?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else from a guy's point of view that you...
I think
because normally it's all about the female.
You're right, it is, and so I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because that's a really good point. What I will say is, like, you have to address everything, but one of the things that men should look for in women is negativity.
Talk to me about that. What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
Yeah, I think you should look for negativity. Like, are they critical? Because that is a soul crusher. And whether they're abusive or not, you won't be happy.
Okay, so you're saying that's a bad thing. Like, if
I'm saying that for men, like deal breakers in relationships, things that you should look for to like whether engage, go forward, not, that's something to look for.
no, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings is like, those who don't increase you will eventually decrease you. So if someone's negative or like an anchor, they're not going to add value to your life. Eventually, they're going to pull from you.
Yeah, we call that the magnifying effect, actually. There's like a psychological principle that it's like whatever you are, if you add to it, it just increases what it is. So
okay. So you meaning if you're good, positive, and you add to that, it's just going to...
Yeah, or like if we look relationally, let's say like you have a solid relationship. Well, adding marriage makes it better. Adding a baby makes it better. Let's say you're fighting and cussing at each other. A lot of time we'll be like, well, if we have a baby, well, no, a baby's just going to make it worse. Marriage is going to make it worse. Okay, it just adds, it just builds on what already exists.
So to touch on that, when you see someone in a relationship doing things that they wouldn't normally do and it's out of their nature, where is that coming from? You start to act a certain way, or you've done things you've never done before?
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'd have to kind of see what's going on in that person's life. Like they could have just lost somebody. Right? They could have had a death in the family and that would explain.
And they're taking it out in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. Or they could be fucking using a substance. I don't know. Right? Like there's like, I always have to kind of like look at the context of the situation. Now, everybody has moments and periods where things are off. Let's say they got in a fight with their boyfriend, girlfriend. That would explain like a mood. That would explain why somebody's off. But you know, how long does it last?
Okay.
How long does that last? Like what is their ownership, accountability? How do they respond when things are difficult? Like those are the things that people need to weigh more heavily.
Okay. I love talking to you, by the way. It's really it's fascinating. What makes a good relationship? What makes a good partnership, a good marriage?
Well, okay. This one's, you need to like be attracted to your partner.
Do you think that is like probably the first thing?
Yeah. I do. Well, it's not everything. It's not everything.
No. But
I know a lot of girls. It's so important.
Okay.
I've gotten so much fucking bad advice on this, just in my own, like, oh, he'll grow on you, or oh, this, or he's so fun. It's like, fuck that. No, like you need to be attracted, physically attracted to your partner. Otherwise, everything else goes out the window.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't pour into your partner the way that you want if you don't have that.
That fire for one another, that lust,
you have to have it, you know. So there's that as a foundation, but also you have to have this like connection. The connection is beyond attraction. It's just like spirit to spirit, soul to soul. It's like a knowing. It's a familiarity. It's a peace. It's comfort. It's just an ebb and it's a flow, and it doesn't require any effort. It's zero effort. It's just there.
What's a good example of knowing about the connection? Is that when you talk about, I think we talked all night and it felt like 2 minutes?
Yeah, kind of. That's a good example. Like that's how people can describe it, or I feel like I've known this person my whole life.
That's another one. Yeah.
You know, but it's just no effort. And not to say that you don't put effort into the relationship, but you don't have to try. You're yourself with them. You're very comfortable around these people, you know.
Do you think a lot of people put on a persona and pretend to be something they're not?
We all do that. Look, like who I am at work is different than who I am at home, but to some degree.
In a relationship though, like when you go on a date, and I think everyone's always putting on the fronts, the best.
Well, we all do that, right? Like we all, like we're not going to lead with our deep and dirty secrets. Like, hey, Sally, here's my book of secrets, you know.
But should we come into it a little bit more open and
I think be vulnerable? Authentic.
Okay.
I think be authentic. Like I'm key on that. Like I'll present my best foot forward, but I'm fucking real and people know it. People know it when they meet me. And I know that I have that energy because I know who I am. I can't fake that.
What do you mean like real?
I'm just very, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, like, you know, when you're being real with somebody and you know when you're being fake, like Tupac said, real, recognize real. I think people know when somebody's being genuine. And I think people know when somebody's being manipulative. I think people know when somebody's kind of fake in the funk with you. And so just be authentic, even if you're being like not all there and like you're showing your best foot forward or your image or whatever, you can still be authentic even within that scope.
That makes a lot of sense. A random question, you may not know the answer, but your first date, when you first start dating, what is the type of thing you recommend doing to get to know the person? Opposed to like wearing a suit, going to a fancy dinner, putting on this persona. What do you recommend for finding out? Do you have that connection? Are you attracted to that person?
Well, I think, look, don't go out on dates if you're not already connected to them, unless it's like a blind date. Like I know a lot of people that are just meeting somebody to see if they could be attracted to them. I just wouldn't even bother. Like, don't waste your time. If
they've asked you out on a date?
If you're not really into it, just even that, and you have to tell yourself, well, let me just go and see, you're probably not really that into them.
That's interesting.
So just don't bother.
So just cutting at the start.
I just think it saves you a lot of time. I know a lot of people that waste a lot of time in the dating process because they keep waiting for something to turn around when you knew all along you weren't really that into them.
That's interesting. It's so simple, but
it's very simple. Like, so there's that. If you have a connection, you'll know it right away. Okay, so feel that. Be like, really, it sounds really dumb, but just honestly be yourself. And if that person is resistant to that, don't bother. Don't bother. Don't fucking waste your time on it.
Because then you all start molding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that's the kind of shit that gets you off track.
And then you end up in a marriage that, how did I get here?
Yeah. You're acting like somebody that you never were because of how you showed yourself up in the beginning,
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Just to kind of wrap up, anything you want to kind of talk about, anything you want to go over? I'm open to anything you may have to share.
I don't really know. Like, I don't really have anything on my mind that I want to talk about. I think relationships are tough. I think dating is a really hard thing.
Do you think dating's got harder?
Yes, I really do.
I do. Because it's social, or is that like everyone's showing the best of the best?
I think everybody's showing their best, and I think also options. I think everybody has like, oh, well, if something's bothering you in your current relationship, instead of working through it, they drop it and go on to the next. Or they're getting this validation from multiple other, you know what I mean?
I always talk about that. Oh, you're so pretty. I would never treat you this way. But if some random guy through a DM who's doing it to 10 other girls at the same time, and people fall into that trap, don't they?
Yeah. Or let's say like you're having a problem with your partner. Okay, well, and you might just go outside of that. Going outside of that relationship is just a click away, and you get that validation on Instagram. Let's say you just post a sexy picture on Instagram because you're fucking mad that you're fighting with your boyfriend. Now you got 500 dudes liking your photos. You're like, I feel better now.
And then that leads you down that trap.
It starts slow like that.